very beginning with the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity and with a number of other partners, among them this, quite recently the Jeff Small Grants program, now with IUCN, with the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and Natural Justice also since a long time already, and with a few other think tanks, for example the CISDL in Canada and the Fridtjof Nansen Institute in Norway, so to provide expertise and technical background and backstopping to our work on capacity building. The ABS initiative is governed by a steering committee in which the donors are represented, as well as the key partners to the initiative, and very important, representatives of the stakeholders from the regions in which we are working to provide guidance to us, to agree on the work plans, and to agree on the budgets, and of course to approve our yearly reports. The initiative is implemented by the GIZ, which is hosting the secretariat for the initiative, and we are in charge of implementing the work plans, develop the work plans, of course, for approval, for presentation to the steering committee. So we are not a GIZ project as it's very often reflected, but we are based in GIZ, but we are working at different terms than normal German development cooperation projects. With the EU funding, also the EU funds and the EU contribution to the ABS initiative is part of a larger project which is called BioPharma, and where Jordi will say a few words afterwards. And so one contribution or one part of this BioPharma project is directed to the ABS initiative. Our main intervention areas is the sub-regional level. So we try to focus and to facilitate experience exchanges among stakeholders in different sub-regions and regions to ensure that countries who have gained experiences, who are ahead in the implementation of access and benefit sharing of the Nagoya Protocol particularly, share these experiences with other countries and provide guidance on how to proceed further. Since the adoption of the Nagoya Protocol in 2010 at COP in Nagoya, our direction is not anymore towards from the sub-regional level to the negotiation, but more focused on the implementation process and to supporting the ratification process of the Nagoya Protocol. I mentioned already some of the instruments, multi-stakeholder workshops, specific trainings, for example, on the linkage between ABS and intellectual property rights, the linkage of ABS and protected areas, specific trainings, for example, on the management for multi-stakeholder processes in the ABS arena. We are commissioning and conducting background studies with our think tanks on, for example, ABS and forest governance. We had some stock-taking studies on ABS-relevant legislation in the Central African region for the COMIFAC, for the Central African Forest Commission, and are engaging also in the development of best practices for ABS. For example, with Natural Justice, we are running, or Natural Justice is running on our behalf with our support, a BCP project for Africa, which tries to generate best practices, how to link and how to involve indigenous and local communities in ABS decision making, in granting, how to grant prior informed consent, and how to establish mutually agreed terms with local indigenous and local communities, how to create a linkage between customary law, customary practices, and formal law and formal procedures. Another area where we are quite engaged in is to involve the private sector, because the private sector is in the very end, besides the research community, which will provide the monetary benefits which should be shared with the providing countries, and for conservation and for the improvement of livelihoods. And so we are running a series, or we did run a series of business dialogue forums with different stakeholders from business stakeholders from Europe, bringing them together with ABS focal points and with other stakeholders, to exchange about potentials of ABS and how to create partnerships between ABS and the business sector, and to, with a view to establish functioning ABS agreements, which in the very end deliver the promise of ABS to generate benefits for conservation and sustainable use. I mentioned a few of the linkages already, the linkage between ABS and intellectual property rights is something we are developing training modules, the linkage also and the involvement between intellectual property rights and traditional knowledge, how to protect the traditional knowledge. These are issues we are trying to address. The linkage to the FAO Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources, I think is a very important one, because when states have to set up now ABS regulations and a regulatory framework for ABS at the national level, also plant genetic resources which are governed or which are governed under the treaty need to be taken into consideration. The linkage to forest governance and PA management, of course, which is today the focus of the workshop. So to sum up, the support we are delivering to countries and to stakeholders in Africa, and with the EU support now also to the Caribbean Pacific, is focused on supporting the ratification process of the Nagoya Protocol, to support national implementation, to develop regulatory frameworks for ABS which are efficient and effective in granting access and enabling benefit sharing, creating these ABS partnerships to valorize genetic resources in a fair and equitable manner, and to upscale the support for ABS capacity development by liaising very closely with the GEF, with the Small Grants Program, and with other donors to integrate ABS into bilateral development cooperation programs. With that, I want to close and hand over to Jordi.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Barbara, for inviting us to give a few words. I think it is now very clear that if we want to conserve biodiversity, we need to address management, equity, and governance issues in protected areas and around protected areas. And it is also clear that this is an area in which countries in the context of the CBD program work have not been delivering so far. This is in the CBD's most recent report. So this is the key issue, I think, that needs to be addressed, and it's a central aspect of the Global Protected Areas Program's work program. And this is where BioPAMA comes in. BioPAMA, Biodiversity and Protected Area Management. So biodiversity is, to conserve biodiversity, we need to address management issues, which also includes, within the framework of BioPAMA, equity and governance. BioPAMA, from our perspective, is a unique effort to combine the best available data on biodiversity in Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific countries with capacity building to strengthen protected area management in ways that benefit both nature and people. So here we have the equity side also of biodiversity and conservation. The program is funded by the European Union and the ACP Secretariat through the European Development Fund, and it has two main components. Before coming to our component, Andreas already mentioned the access and benefit sharing component, which is implemented by the ABS Capacity Development Initiative. The component that the IUCN is involved and we jointly implement with the European Commission Joint Research Center is the protected areas component, and the rest of my words will be focusing on that component. What are the linkages between this component and ABS issues? I think there are 4 points I'd like to highlight. One is that BioPAMA's focus on enabling effective and equitable management of well-governed protected areas in ACP countries has an important link, I think, with ABS issues. For example, within that context, we will be working quite a bit on governance of protected areas, and I think governance is a fundamental issue for ABS as well as for protected areas. We also think, and we've been exploring in a few over the days here in the Congress, that there may be some opportunities for joint implementation with the ABS initiative in a few selected protected areas in Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific countries, where we can bring together ABS and governance work and other work we may be doing from the protected areas component to increase our mutual impacts within these protected area sites, and probably increase our learning and best practices. BioPalma will also have a very strong focus on generating information and making it accessible for better decision making in these regions, both at the site and national levels. And we're talking now about how ABS related information or ABS relevant information can be a part of these regional information systems, which will be developed through BioPalma. It will also have a very strong focus on helping countries to effectively meet and report on their commitments to the CBD program work on protected areas. And again, I think this is an area where we can work together with the ABS initiative and the ABS component of BioPalma to ensure delivery of the program of work on protected areas, both equity issues and other protected area issues. And finally, BioPalma will have also strong focus on promoting the sharing of knowledge and best practice within these regions. This fits very well with global and regional interest in enhanced integration and cooperation. And I think also we've also heard from Andreas just now, it also fits with the ABS initiative's ongoing efforts. So I think there is another point of collaboration, and I'm sure it'll be very fruitful as we move ahead with BioPalma. And I should just mention, BioPalma is just getting off the ground, so we're just starting to have some results. The ABS initiative is well ahead of us in implementing. So those are the points I wanted to make. I do have some brochures on BioPalma if anybody is interested in getting some more information. And we also have a launch later this evening from 7 to 9 in the Protected Planet Pavilion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Andreas and Jordi. And we're going to just briefly show you this movie that I announced before, which is called ABS Simply Explained. It's a little movie that we have produced and that we're using really also as an information tool for a variety of audiences on ABS. And I just want to mention the movie is available on our website in English, Spanish, and French so far, and it's freely downloadable. So if you have the occasion in your work to speak about ABS, if you have audiences that you want to inform about this topic, you're free and welcome to use this movie also. I have a few brochures here about the ABS initiative. Our website is mentioned here, so whoever's interested can grab these on their way out.
Since the beginning of humankind, we have been taking advantage of what Mother Nature provides for us. From using animals, cereals, and plants, to discovering the first antibiotic, we have come a long way. We know our world is rich. Animals, plants, and microorganisms contain billions of useful genetic resources. Some are already widely known, and many of them are being used to produce medicine, food, cosmetics, and other important things. But a huge part of what nature holds for us still remains undiscovered. Take a plant, for example, deeply hidden in the rainforest. Only the local people may be aware of what the plant can be used for. Yet, its genetic composition could be useful to millions of people all over our planet. Sharing and using the world's genetic resources is important for the progress of humankind. This is why we need internationally agreed terms for ABS, access and benefit sharing, with regard to genetic resources. How to access genetic resources and share the benefits between those who use them and those who provide them in a fair and equitable way is illustrated in ABS Simply Explained. Every country holds rights over animals, plants, and genetic resources found within its borders. Anyone from another country who wants to use such resources must respect these sovereign rights. That was agreed upon by 172 countries at the UN Rio Summit in 1992, when the CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity was born. The Convention on Biological Diversity and its Bonn Guidelines define the ABS principles. An interested foreign researcher or company may only access a genetic resource if allowed by the providing country. This also includes traditional knowledge that is associated with the genetic resource, because traditional knowledge held by indigenous and local communities often plays an important role in the discovery of new active ingredients in genetic resources. In accordance with national legislation, a PIC, a prior informed consent, needs to be obtained from the providing country. The PIC request should outline the nature and the intended goal of the planned research and utilization. The MAT, the mutually agreed terms, will then define the benefits for the provider of the genetic resource as well as further contractual issues. These benefits could be monetary, such as a lump sum payment or a share of the profit, or non-monetary, such as a transfer of knowledge, technology, or training. These rules apply to commercial users and, on the basis of special considerations, also to non-commercial users. The idea behind this concept is to help conserve our biodiversity by sharing the benefits from its utilization in a fair and equitable way. In 2010, the Nagoya Protocol fleshed out and specified the access and benefit sharing principles of the CBD for countries providing and using genetic resources in a legally binding way. All the concepts explained so far are now part of the protocol, which will enter into force when 50 parties have ratified it to ensure facilitated access to genetic resources and the sharing of benefits arising from their use. The protocol is to enhance legal certainty for all parties involved in the utilization of genetic resources. And another important element was added to the protocol. Official checkpoints now have to be designated in countries where genetic resources are being utilized. Along the research and development chain, these checkpoints will help verify whether PIC has been obtained and MAT have been established. The collected information will then be sent to a specific public database where it can be reviewed by the country that has provided access to the resource. This procedure allows for the tracking of a genetic resource from provider to user all the way to innovation and potential commercialization. This helps to ensure fair sharing of benefits if a product based on a genetic resource is introduced to the market. Now, all ratifying countries need to translate the provisions of the Nagoya Protocol into domestic laws or regulations that reflect the interests of all stakeholders concerned. ABS, implemented properly, holds great potential for multiple benefits for users, providers, and for the conservation of nature.
Can we have the lights, please? Whoa. Okay. Good morning, everybody. So, yes, this was a very brief introduction then to the issue of ABS as a background to the two following presentations. I'm going to go a little bit further into the linkages between ABS and protected areas and show one example. We're having two examples, one that I will give about a national park in Ivory Coast, and Holly will talk about an indigenous and community conserved area in Sabah, Malaysia. Both of these examples are projects that have been developed where the first steps have been taken but that are really still at the beginning of their implementation. The truth is there is not a lot of experience out there yet on how ABS could work in protected areas and how it could contribute to protected areas. It's really a field where we're now engaging with our partners now that this Nagoya Protocol has been adopted. And so the two projects we're going to present to you are meant a little bit as a trigger for thinking and a trigger in terms of discussing what could be possible, what makes sense, what doesn't, and I hope we'll have a bit of time with you at the end to do exactly that. So briefly to get back to the linkages between the two fields, there's been two meetings in the past couple of years. One was convened actually by Natural Justice and IUCN together with UNEP in Gland last year, I believe, which looked at these interfaces. So we had quite a number of people there from different arenas. We had a little experts meeting also at the end of last year from the ABS initiative that looked at the linkages between ABS protected area and forest governance, so opening the field even further. And these are some of the thoughts that came out of these experts meetings, which I just want to sum up so that we can lay the land, but we're actually going to go much more deeper into it through the examples and avoiding a bit the dry theoretical discussion. But the basic motivation of this was that a lot of the genetic diversity, the biological diversity of the planet obviously resides within protected areas, which are often still the repositories of this diversity, which means also that protected areas are often centers where research happens, be it non-commercial